Okay, hey everyone, this is Toddy. So I started the meeting recording. I see Zach, Rosalind, Samir on the meeting. Do we have any agenda for today? I believe we do. Let me share my screen. Okay, do you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. Just capture the Okay, the first item that we have is we need to create and publish the blog post of security audit report announcement on July 5th or July 6th per discussion with Adam. So that's kind of submitted from Feynman. I am not sure what is kind of the ask for the community. So Samir or Zach, do you know? Is this like I don't see a link in the notes. I'm not sure what is asked here. Let me check the.
Maybe he's asking for review or feedback. That would be my only guess.
I think he's requesting us to create the blog post for. I think the OST Ada Logistics is asking if we can create a blog post. We being Notary community.
Okay. Does that mean that he's asking for somebody to take kind of the action item on their side, or?
Yeah, that's what I believe he's asking, if we can take the action item. Basically, Ada Logics is requesting notation maintainers to create a blog post to announce the security audit report. And then it shouldn't be a big blog post based on the examples I'm seeing.
Is that something that you guys can do on your side, or like either you or Pritesh?
I will check with Pritesh. I would have deferred it to him. I will check with him. He's not on the call. It does look like we have managed to spend a good an hour or two on it to make sure it is written, and then going through a review cycle. But yes, I think that's the ask. At least we are clear on the ask. To create a blog post announcing that such and such organization has done the security audit, and then report the findings as well at a high level.
Samir, do you think this is blocked at all by the release of the secure deployment doc that's still under PR review?
I would think so, that we don't want to announce the completion of the security audit without the threat model doc being there. But I think the experts there are Shive and Pritish to tell us, hey, that doc is complete. So this is good to publish. So I would not be date driven at this time.
Okay. Are we talking about the threat model that E is driving, or something else?
Yes, the threat model. Yes, to make sure the threat model is updated and reflects what was covered.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was talking about the secure deployment doc that I wrote. That is the recommendations for how to securely deploy notation.
I think that also should be there. Let me just add this to the notes. The completion. And Zach, you mentioned, sorry, the secure deployment, right?
Yeah, I'm going to drop you a link in the chat in just a second to the PR.
And I remember actually approving this morning the threat model because he asked me for that. So I will actually link the threat model here.
Yeah,
so we should have, yeah, go ahead.
Take a look in the chat. I dropped the link to the PR for the secure deployment.
Okay, let me copy that. Okay, what happened? Okay, I think we actually have all the information here, so we should be fine. If you can talk with Pritesh eventually to get a draft of the blog post and we can review it. I will be out actually on the 3rd, which is the kind of Monday.
Okay.
But I can take a look if you guys tag me. I can take a look at the blog post.
Yeah. Put my and Pritish's name on it. He and I can take a swap, and then we all can iterate on top of it. Yeah.
Okay. The next one is anything else around that, or I think we're settled on this.
I think we are set on this. Just make sure we link those two things. The secure deployment guide has to be complete, and then the threat model doc has to be updated. Let's make sure those two are in place.
Yep, I will link that one. I know that on the threat model, we have approvals. And Shiwei reviewed that. I think either you or Pritesh, I don't remember, one of you also. Pritesh, I think, had a lot of comments there. I also had comments. All three of us approved it. We can do a final look, or we have enough approvals for E to merge the threat model.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll link it. I'll find the issue, the PR. Okay. Next one is review the new Notary documentation directory structure. This is Rosalind. Do you want to talk about that?
Yes, sure.
And let me see the document.
All right, there it is. So for the, should I go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, thank you. For the new proposed structure, I have segmented the Notary documentation directory into different sections. The first one there is the Notary project, while the second, the notation CLI, to the last one. So the quick start guide was still there in the previous one. And then the tutorials part and how to guide and using notation CLI and CI/CD pipelines. Over here, I have a suggestion to be moved to the tutorial section. So I do not know if any other person has a suggestion regarding this.
I have a quick question. Are the top level items that are in bold, I don't know if those are H1s or not, are those intended to be directories, or is that just logical separation?
The top level items are supposed to be directories.
Okay. I mean, I have some overall feedback, but I want you to be able to just explain your approach. And I'd love to hear where this is coming from and what you think.
All right. Okay. Could I start from the very beginning, like from the top up? Yeah. For the Notary project, in my last, not my last meeting, I think the very first meeting I joined 2 weeks ago. So during the meeting, it was mentioned the need to rename the repository or make clear what Notary project is, what notation CLI is, and Notary itself. So I thought Notary project should have a different repository that with an overview. I know this already exists. The overview of Notary projects already exists. So under the Notary project, I propose the contribution guide should be included in the Notary project after the overview. The contribution guide on the page is not elaborate enough, in my own opinion, for a first-time contributor. So I propose to add in the different steps on ways, different steps to the contribution guide. And then I also added contributing to Notary sub-projects. This could be contribution to the sub-project or to the code itself, and then the community aspect, and then how to report security vulnerability. And the next repository I added here is the notation CLI. I feel this should...
Rosalind, are these separate? These are separate GitHub repositories that you want their own documentation, or are these directories on the current notaryproject.dev website?
There are directories on the current notation website, documents website. It's not a different repository.
Okay, you kept saying repository.
Oh, sorry, I think I mixed that up. They are different, they are folders under the notaryproject.dev repository, if I'm correct here.
So
Okay.
you mean over here what I'm sharing in the on the screen, is that correct? Because currently we have blog, community, docs, security audit. Are you saying?
No, I'm saying under content, I think we have docs. Under docs, yeah. So this falls on docs folder.
So under the docs folder, we will create folders which are like this,
which have
right?
Yes.
Okay, I am following now.
So, okay, can I go ahead?
Yeah, please.
So under the notation CLI, I propose this should be a different folder for functionality sake, for new users to get to what they are looking for on the documentation site easily. So the notation CLI overview would cover what notation CLI is all about and every bit of information about that. And then the installation guides, I had to break this down into different sections, and Feynman did suggest that in the next version, that is the next version of Notary on notation, that there would be a need for different installation methods. He mentioned using Snap for Linux and using Homebrew, using Homebrew for Mac OS, and installing notation CLI using Winget for Windows. And under these windows, I had screenshotted the install it manually section because I find that the documentation under this section, under the part, needs to be expanded for new users to be able to follow along.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. So the additional configuration, this is already available on the website, on the site, documentation sites.
And maybe you can help me with, oops, I'm sorry, I clicked the wrong button. Let me reshare. I just wanted to move this thing. Okay. Rosalind and Zach, help me. don't remember. So this folder structure that we create here, is that what is projected under the on the website itself?
Yes, it is what it under the
Yeah.
docs. Yes.
Yeah, it's a table of contents. That's how it gets
Okay.
exploded.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Got it.
So,
So
under the folder section, I'm proposing the notation CLI folder to be a standalone folder where the installation guides would be on inside of.
Okay.
In general, so Rosalind, thanks for going through this. I agree with you about the additional installation methods. I believe some of those were captured either in GitHub tasks or in another location, but they definitely need to be added. And I think once there's more unique ways of doing it, so Snap via Linux, Homebrew via macOS, though Homebrew I think is cross-platform, and some other ways with Windows, I agree that the installation guides, we'd probably need one per platform. I think that makes a lot of sense. At the moment, there's not a lot of difference between installation guides and the notation CLI directory that you're proposing. There's not really at the moment another way to install Notary. It's only through notation. I personally think that we should just leave it named installation guides, as opposed to doing notation CLI and then nesting it with essentially just the installation guides. I see that you added an overview as well as making reference to the directory structure document and considering relocating it there. I don't know if there's enough content to create a notation CLI overview guide to really explain what it is. So I feel like I think what you've outlined there for net new docs is great, but I disagree that we need a notation CLI directory. I've also been in the project a little bit longer, so I don't necessarily have as much of a beginner's mind approach to seeing this, and so there's a lot of things I admit that I probably miss. I know Toddy, Samir, what do you all feel about having it called notation CLI as opposed to installation guides?
I actually like where Rosalind is going with, but I don't know whether we should call it notation CLI or whether we should have a whole section about notation here, which not only describes the CLI, but describes also and has the CLI reference, has also things like how to use the libraries, what is the purpose of the libraries, because we have actually users doing this, which I believe falls into the developer documentation. So if we have a whole section which is notation, right, and we have like under that section things like the CLI, so the CLI subsection, then we have developer documentation which describes the libraries, how to use the libraries, how to develop a plugin. So I think that will be more useful. The reason being is that, like, as we discussed in the kind of the naming discussions, we may have more than like notation in the future, and we also need to add kind of the overall things that I see her kind of outlining, like concepts and the project information. They are kind of high level or H1 or heading 1 type of things. So we'll have about the project, about the concepts, and then we have like one of the sub projects, which right now is the main one as a whole section. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the other thing that's going to happen with that though is a lot of the content that's in other locations like tutorials and how-to guides. Like if you click in the documentation on the right-hand side, all of the vast majority of that content is all focused around notation. So if we do have a notation directory that's not just notation CLI, if you just want to call it notation, I don't know. A lot of the tutorials, a lot of the how-to guides, a lot of the stuff that's being worked on right now by me in particular, but also some other contributions, that's all going to ostensibly be relocated to that directory. So you're not going to have currently. I understand that there's some confusion, or at least there's a desire to have a better top level layout of the TOC, but it's going to essentially look like Notary project, and then notation CLI, and then blank. Because troubleshooting, that's all notation based. FAQ, that's mostly notation based, but I think there's some other things. CLI reference, that's going to go underneath. So
maybe one question for you. I have one question for you. So if we have a concepts like, for example, signing, right? And we understand that actually right now the signing is done with Notary, but those concepts also will have with notation. Sorry, I need more coffee this morning. In the concept itself, we may actually have a description of things like how do you kind of create a certificate, the certificate chains and all these things, right? And this is how you can actually use notation to sign with this type of certificate and this type of certificate. From there on, we can also refer to, let's say, tools for verification and how those tools can be. Do you think that falls under the notation, or do you think that is kind of more generic type of documentation, which should be outside notation? Because I can foresee a tutorial which says this is how you sign and this is eventually how you verify. And in this tutorial, we can point to, let's say, Kyverno, who is currently using notation libraries to do the verification. Do you think that's under notation? Or
so if it's a general, my opinion, and I'm open to feedback, is yes, if it's a concept that's generalized, that's not specific to notation, that would go at like the top level. So you could have if there's enough content, you could have a concepts directory where there's currently one that has concepts specific that are general concepts to the Notary project. If there's so like notation directory, that first item, that would go specifically underneath the notation CLI or notation in a world where we refactor to a notation directory. Plugin development, that's notation. Notary project specifications and requirements, that would probably stay there. Experimental features, I think that's all notation, so that would go underneath there. But if there's net new content that is generic, not specific to notation, then yeah, I think it would go at that high level. When you're talking separate concept that you were talking about a tutorial, which would not go underneath concepts. If the tutorial is using notation, that should fall underneath notation, or we need to figure out what. Basically, my concern, just rewinding, is if we have a notation directory that contains a subset of the notation content, and then we keep high-level directories of we keep a peer directory that says tutorial or quick starts or whatever, and that content is notation based, that I think is confusing for the user. I think that if it's if you want a notation directory, we put all the notation content in there, which is probably, off the top of my head, I'd say about 80% of the content in here. But if it's a future state where there's other approaches to doing stuff like Kyverno, or if there's another library or binary that someone uses to do notary signing and such, we'd have to figure out where does that go. Because if we say, oh, okay, well, we'll just keep another quick starts and tutorial directory at the peer and only stick non-notation stuff in there, then then it becomes a little confusing because, where do we okay, so there's tutorials, but there's also tutorials underneath notation specifically. So it's just, we need to think about in the broader context, where do we want everything to live and how do we want people to navigate it in the least confusing way possible? I believe Hugo has a way to cross list stuff in the TOC. So have multiple TOC entries for the same item that's just located in a single location. So we could ostensibly have it located underneath notation, but then cross list it underneath quick starts or tutorials or however we divvy it up. But before we do a refactor, I think it's important to have this sort of overarching discussion about, okay, in a future state, if you have, like you're saying, Toddy, a Kyverno tutorial or a Kyverno quick start, where should it live?
Well, I do not foresee Kyverno tutorial, but place where we can say those are, for example, the tools or systems that understand notary project signatures, for example, right?
Sure, but if you have a location, we have to figure out what that's called.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you.
And I think, Rosalind, you did a really good job with this outline, because I think it really reveals it's kind of a soft spot about a little bit of a confusion point.
All right, thank you, Zach.
Okay, so coming back to our agenda. I
mean, this I think was one of the last items in the agenda. I do have to drop off in a minute or two. So I just kind of want to ask, oh, sorry, there's other items. I just wanted to ask, from a next steps perspective on the outline, do we want to leave feedback in the Google Doc that Rosalind set up? I guess what would be the appropriate next steps to kind of continue this discussion? Because I don't, I'm sorry that I do have to fall off, but I think it's a really important discussion to have that's broader than just what's affected things right now.
So Rosalind, what's your expectation? Do you expect feedback in the Google Doc document, and do you have any kind of pressuring timelines that we would like to follow?
Yes, I do expect feedback on the Google Docs. Then regarding the timeline, I'm not sure when I should run up the whole stuff with Yi and Feynman.
Okay, then yeah, Zach, if you want to comment on the doc, let's do that. Maybe if we can comment before Monday's meeting, I'll ask Feynman and Yi to actually review that with Rosalind offline, any feedback, and hopefully they can take next steps on Monday. Will that work?
Yes, I like you. I'm also out of office on Monday and then Tuesday for the holiday in the United States. So I won't be back online until Wednesday, but I'm happy to leave my feedback prior to that meeting, and that can be discussed asynchronously. And then happy to have a follow-up discussion on the community meeting next week, or to do a one-off if that's needed.
Okay. Okay,
Also,
then feedback. Yeah, go ahead, Rosalind.
Okay, I'd also like to ask of your opinion regarding the using notation with CI/CD pipelines. Could I move that to the tutorial section?
Is that for me or for Zach?
Yeah, anybody can give me a feedback.
I would be fine with moving it to the tutorial, but I'm just giving fair warning that that's also sort of part of like the larger discussion around, should notation content exclusively sit in a notation subdirectory, or should we have divided notation content where some lives in notation subdirectory, some lives at top level directories. I think given your approach, I'm perfectly comfortable with you moving it there as a point of feedback, and we continue the discussion because I think it'll yield some interesting results. But I also do think that it's part of the larger discussion about where does that belong. Did I do a good job of kind of articulating where I'm coming from?
For me, yes. Anybody else? Feedback?
Okay, really have to fall off, but thanks everyone. I'll see you all next week.
Thanks, Zach. Have a nice day. Next, so anything else, Rosalind, you want to talk about? Or so we'll leave feedback in the Google Doc. You will discuss with Feynman. You work with Feynman, right?
Yes. And Yi.
Okay. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. The next thing is request to review the Zach's nomination. I believe we had few people approving that one, but we need more. So Pritesh, Samir, do you have any opportunity to actually get, I don't know, Nias and Milind to actually say, are they okay with that or not? We need actually votes from organizational maintainers. I can ping also Steve and Justin from Docker to see whether they can comment on this.
Well, I can follow up with Niyaz on this.
Okay. And when you talk with him, eventually, would you mind asking him for the next one, which is the proposal that Sajay had?
I think somebody's already following up on that, but yeah, I can do it again. Yeah.
Okay. I think Milind commented, right? Yeah. Okay, if you can follow up on this one, we need kind of more of the maintainers to really act on this. And I will try to also get in touch about with Docker folks on this specific one, because this should be important for them. Sorry, is Nias with Y or with I? Sorry, forgetting. Okay, so we need to follow up with the maintainers on those two action items. Anything else that folks want to bring to the agenda today? Sajay, Pritesh, Nagarayan.
No, nothing from my side.
Yeah, I'd added a few more comments in the doc, like just to make sure we use the term notary project consistently, especially for the docs side, right? That and maybe there was one question actually for the docs where we call out a concept for notary V2. I don't think that's necessary, but we could maybe, if you want to call out history of notary V2, maybe as a subsection somewhere. Others should probably chime in more on that because I haven't worked on the whole branding thing, but getting feedback from the maintainers for these other two issues will really help speed up this release as well.
Yeah, so I think the more important thing is really getting the maintainers to act on those issues, because this is as much as we can do, right? And if we know that organizational maintainers also have power. If we do not hear from the, let's say, notary repo maintainers, but we hear from the organizational ones, I think it should be okay if we go and merge those changes.
Okay. Just want to make sure that do we have anything written down about governance that calls out that maintainership requirement or like participation requirement or something like that? There are no safeguards in place, and these PRs can be lying there forever, right? Like OCI went through this for quite some time, and other projects also.
Yeah, so I don't think we have anything in the governance. It's a good question. Maybe that's a good thing actually to bring up and see. I will go and review the governance documents and see whether we have something. We I think we were discussing in the past to have the the contribution ladder documents, which maybe it's time to really push those to get accepted in the project. But yeah, I will review the governance, and eventually next time we meet, I can send a message in Slack what I discover in the governance.
Awesome. What about sub-project working group definitions? I think there was an issue for that also, right?
Yeah, there is an issue. We need to move that forward also.
All right, thanks.
Okay. Anything else, Pritesh?
Nope, I just added a same issue in the comment when Nihar had already has already commented on the issue. So I just added that to the chat.
Sorry.
On the issue, not on the PR. But I think they are almost similar things.
Let me check. Okay. Yeah, let's continue the discussion on that.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, folks. Have a nice day.
Right, thank you, everyone.